So in parts 1 through 10, I covered many aspects of the etymologies that are related to the aspect of the sun god, Ra, or Re, or Apollo, Shamash, and by Utu and many other names throughout history. So let's take a look at some words that are etymologically related to the sun god, Re, or Ra. Like I said earlier, the sun is the sower and the reaper of the harvest. So this is why Rai is named after the sun god. So the harvest is the end of the age, the end which is death, the harvest. So that's why we have the catcher and the Rai, which of course is all about the red, bloody death. So much of mythology and mysteries of today actually come from the ancient harvest, the ancient grain rituals that were around for thousands of years before the Bible. And of course, all of this ancient mysticism is based upon the annual cycles of the harvest, the sowing and the reaping, thus the life and death. So these ancient rituals all revolved and had all of this death mysticism towards the end of the age at the end of the harvest, which is death of life. Thus it was known as the last sheaf, which held all of the prophecy and the mystic spiritual elements that were held in the harvest. And this last sheaf was known as the ancient, goddess, but also basically the spirit of life itself in the harvest, and it had to be carried over into the next year. Thus, in order to be reborn, it had to be slain. And this is where we get the concept of the slain god or the slain king, the killing of the king. And of course, they always have to chop them into pieces. Thus, Saturn was chopped into pieces, Dionysus, Baal, and of course, Osiris. And and that's why when JFK, the king, was slain during noontime, the time of the sun, high noon, thus we saw his wife picking up his pieces and gathering his parts, exactly like Osiris and Isis. So just like Osiris, it was the resurrection from death, aka what we know today as the Green Man. Thus, the life of God's Son, the sower and the reaper, the seed of divide. So you see, the truth is, the devil, Satan, is just Saturn. Both are known to be ruling at the end of the age, because that's what they symbolize. They symbolize death at the end of the age, which is why we have the last sheaf, for example. It's just talking about the age of Saturn, when he rules over and takes over the time of the sun during that season. So that's why we have the last book in the Bible, the book of Revelation. And if you did your research, you'd know that the Bible takes its name from the Phoenician city of Byblos, which takes its name by the way of Cronus, or Saturn. And so some people tell me, Truthiracy, your etymology only works on some words. It can't work on all words, like Ra, for example, or Re. How does the word rat, relate to Re or Ra? You see, rats and mice are rodents. The Ro of the Ra of Re, the sun god. But how, might you ask, are they related? Simple. They are related in every fundamental way, because the rats were always in the fields, in the crops. The rats, the rodents, and the mice were the ones that were attracted to the grains and the rice, which is named after the rays of the sun. So in fact, the etymology does lead us to the root source and the true meaning. You see, that's why the grains are the Gaia and Ra, the earth and the sun. So through etymology alone, the very word grain is very revealing, thus showing Gaia, Ra, and the Ain, the earth, the sun, and the rain. So of course this gives us our GR words like grain, grow, grass, and group that all grow green on the ground of Gaia. And so now you'll understand the name of a grape. And of course, the grapes make the wine, which is created by the seasons of the rain and the sun. Which of course is why Jesus' first miracle is to change water into wine, because that's what the Son of God does. And of course, rodents and rats are symbols of fertility, because they are prolific and they reproduce rapidly. So the dent in rodent is referring to the DE word, or a dalet word from Hebrew, implying that it's a doorway going down to the underworld, like a hole, like a dent, or like when we go to the dentist, like a mother's den, the cavity, the hole, the sacred hole of the goddess, thus Mother Earth. And of course rats crawl and live inside of dens and holes, exactly like the serpents, which of course is the fertility symbol of the male, which devours the rodents. And of course, Apollo, the sun god, was known to transform into a rodent, thus Apollo playing the role of the harvest lord. He is the one who is in control of the crops in the fields, thus he has to control the rats, the mice, and the rodents. So on the sundial Chinese zodiac, which dates back thousands of years, we find the symbology of the rat, which actually basically correlates to the time of winter, which correlates to the zodiac house of Capricorn, Saturn L. So most people aren't even aware of the symbolism and the mystique and the ancient mythological aspect that the rodent plays in our society. This is why it's embedded in all of our media and our stories, and our culture. So this ancient mythological aspect of the rodent is why they indoctrinate our children and use the rodents in cartoons and animations. So since we've been kids, we've been spoon-fed these concepts, but we were most likely blind to realizing that these symbolic creatures were the very foundation of many of our cartoons as we grew up. So rats are crafty little creatures, and they're very cunning, and they're survivalists, and this is why they play an important role, like I said, in our culture. So most people don't realize that, the mouse and the rats are, they're portrayed to be cute, but they're actually symbolically, evil and nasty and gross. And of course, this is why it is associated with witchcraft and sorcery.
Then he transformed into a rat.
Show me. Give in to him, Ron.
What are you trying to do to him? Scabbers! Leave him alone! Get off him! What are you doing? Scabbers!
And of course, this is exactly why the Bible has the golden mouse. The gold represents the sun and the silver represents the moon. In Christianity, the mouse is demonized for allegedly gnarling at the foot of the cross. Thus, rodents and rats are creatures of foresight and prudence. So that's why a race to your death is known as a rat race. In fact, the very word race has the word Ra in it. In fact, in the ancient world, many races were held in the honor of the sun god, the golden sun god Apollo. So now you understand why the Wizard of Oz is the sun going through the 4 seasons on the yellow brick road. So this is why races are held in lanes or roads, because the road is from Ra, the sun. And when we're on a road, that's why we follow the yellow brick road, where you'll find reflectors. And so now you'll understand why our cars have Horus power of the sun Apollo god and his horse. So we're going to come back to Apollo the sun god, but first I want to cover a few other etymologies. So we know that the rapture related etymologies of rapid, ripple, ripe, rape, and wrapped are etymologically related, but I want to explain why and how. So the word ripe has an easier and more direct relevance to the sun, so therefore it's a little easier to grasp and understand. So throughout the season, the sun ripens the harvest, and then we reap it. We strip it clean, which is why the ripe reaping is related to rape, which is why we have the ancient abduction story of Persephone and Hades to the underworld for 6 months, as I explained earlier. So a raping is a reaping. You are stripping away and cutting off and abducting the harvest. We are seizing the harvest and carrying it off. The real and true etymology of the word rape, which brings us to our next relevant related word, to wrap. So yes, indeed, the word wrap, or when somebody raps, wrapping comes from Ra or Re, the sun god. So the word wrap and rapture are actually rooted etymologically. And of course, the rapture comes at the end, or the death, like winter or the nighttime, that takes over the daytime. Thus the red that is overtaken by the blue. So you see, it's the two sides that fight and struggle against one another. It's the ancient seasons battling one another. Red versus blue, like the Bloods versus the Crips. The two gangs that battle and fight one another, fighting to become number one. Which is why they fight back and forth and try to outdo one another, trying to say I'm better than you are. And that's why they rap, because they're trying to rapture and rape and reap the other.
I read your book, you got a strict religion, no bacon, but mandatory circumcision. I'm a jolly bowl of jelly, giving holiday presents, but all the chosen people ever get for Christmas is jealous.
Who gets lost for 40 years?
You're a glorified secretary, so write this down.
We got these nuts.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
So much drama in the Israel BC. It's kinda hard talking directly to the G-O single D. Hand me my chisel, I got a new command missile for y'all. Thou shalt not let children sit on a grown man's lap at the mall.
And what do you get from the red and the blue? You get the deity, or the rap god.
Could I not blow? All I do is drop F-bombs. Feel my wrath of attack rappers are having a rough time period. Here's a maxi pad, it's actually disastrously bad. For the whack while I'm masterfully constructing this masterpiece.
Cause I'm beginning to feel like a rap god, rap god. All my people from the front to the back nod, back nod.
Now who thinks their arms are long enough to slap box? Morphing into an immortal coming through the portal. You're stuck in a time warp from 2004 to...
Don't mistake it for Satan.
It's a fatal mistake if you think I need to be overseas and take a vacation to trip abroad and make a ball in the face it. You'll be a retard. Be a king? Think not. Why be a king? You can be a god. I might like a little Alizé with a side of knife and ride a motorcycle bike right through the side of my high school. Satan's disciple with a sniper rifle and a knife and a white diaper liable to you while I snipe you.
So like I said, the raping and the reaping is when Saturn or Satan, the person or character that represents the end of times, takes over. because one side was in control of the sun for their season, and now it has been won over and battled and lost to the new one who takes over, the character that represents the sun in that season. So at the end of the year, we find the character of Santa Claus and Satan and Saturn, because that's what it all represents. Thus the goat of Saturn, thus the goat of Satanists, thus the inversion, because it's that time of the year when Old Father Time at the end is old and is inverted as soon as time goes to 1201, because it becomes the new hour or the new year. Thus the 13th hour or the 13th month is the new year. So the Antichrist is just simply the character that represents the time of opposition, as above, so below. The time of inversion or hanging upside down, Saturnalia, Christmas, it becomes the new year. But the rebirth does not come until the raping and the reaping. Thus, the rapid rapture of the rap that seizes and carries off the number one spot, the winner. And just as the evil darkness and death of the night takes over the goodness of the day, so does the evilness and death of winter take over summer. It will always be this way. This is exactly why the winner of a race will always be the winter, the winner. So now you know why these characters and all of their evil symbolism and their numerology and everything, it all has to do with Satan and the devil. 13, 666, which are all really just symbolic and numerical values for the seasons of life. And a prime example of how the Illuminati uses the ignorance of the people against themselves. So that's why Eminem has his name forwards and reverse, as well as him, in his video about the fire, and of course he's in the fields, the rye fields of death. So he's showing you the ancient harvest blood sacrifice rituals that were held in the sacred fields. The crops that grew from the sun and then were to be reaped and carried off and raptured. So that's why the rappers are playing the role of the reaper, the slayer, because they are there to seize the moment. The slayer of time, the rain man of death and rebirth. So once again we see the connection of the sun and water that brings life to this world, the cycle of life. So this is why we find sun etymology in water. So we all know that light reflects on top of water, which is why Jesus walked on top of water. But also the very word ripple, we find the rip, the rye word, R-I, from the sun. So just like the water wave motion, you have the wave motion or the radiation wave length, or the light wave, which is a motion of back and forth, up and down. And of course, this is exactly what the rappers are doing. They're going back and forth and going over repetitive patterns, which is why they repeat themselves. And of course, that's why they say they've gone through the first heat or the first wave. And like I explained earlier, the sun moves in a wave formation across the sky. So waves are slower than ripples because ripples are rapid, which is exactly why we have rapid waters that are moving rapidly. The red and the blue, the one that says bye to two, which is why at the end when we leave, we say bye and we wave our hands. So now you understand why the rappers are rapidly repeating and rhyming words. The continuous motion and flow, which is why the rapper raps and flows. The rapid, repetitive motion and recycling and repeating. So this is why we have the spinning, recycling record of Re, which records as a record, a moment in time. So it's an LP, which of course is 12 inches and runs at 33 1/3 RPMs. So now you'll understand why they say he ran that race in record time. And by the way, the first LP was unveiled on June 21st, 1948, the summer solstice. And by the way, since you understand the truth about the inversion of the opposite character, you'll understand why they play records in reverse and then say that it's going to have a satanic message. So for those who are wondering what the difference between rap and rap is and how they're exactly alike, allow me to explain. So today we know the earth revolves around the sun, but of course the ancients thought the sun revolved around the earth. And one of these cycles was always celebrated as a year, and that's why we celebrate a birthday, for example. So on these dates, at the end of the cycle, we received a gift, a present, which of course is always wrapped up, because it's at the end when you wrap things up, like the red bow on a wreath, which marks the end as well as the beginning. Thus, the ancient rituals of the golden bow or the bow that we put on our presents, which of course is why they also have ribbons. So you place the ribbon on the outside when you're all finished and done, just like our ribs, by the way. So anyway, that's why the Bible has doomsday, the end of days, you know, the end time prophecies, the final battle, you know, Revelations, Apocalypse, and Armageddon. It all is talking about the end times, the end of the age, the end of a cycle, not the end of the world and not the end of time. So now you'll understand that in a race, at the end, at the finish line, you run through the ribbon. And at the very, very end of the race, they place the ribbon around your neck, either gold, silver, or bronze. And I've explained this in my past videos, but the serpent is the garland or the ribbon that we wrap around our Christmas trees. And by the way, for those that don't know, Apollo was the god of music. And for obvious reasons, the sun has a repetitive pattern, like a tempo or a beat, like the repetitive patterns and the rhyming, which of course has the etymological root of Re. Now of course, all rappers rap with their mouth. So when we take a look at Ra or Re, the sun god, in the Egyptian hieroglyphic form, you'll notice that the letter R, or the Resh, is the symbol for the mouth, meaning speech. So, of course, the best rapper gets the golden crown, the seated king, the reaper, the slayer, the one who destroyed his enemies to be throned and crowned as king. The Hebrew word kara means to speak out or to call out. And the word for reap is katsar, like the red sun of the sardine stone. So Ra was the divine name. His name was the hidden name, the secret name, the unspoken name of God. So the unspoken, hidden, true, secret name of Ra was actually given to the goddess Isis. So Ra's hidden divine name, his secret name, gave him the power to create by merely speaking them into existence.
Within the heart of the living noon stirred the spirit of the waters, the great snake, Appa. From the coils of Appa sprang Atum, first god of creation. In his heart he created their names and spoke them. Shu, the air. Tefnut, the moisture. And they were given form. Atum spoke the name of his soul bird, Bennu, the phoenix. Bennu landed on the first dry land and laid his egg. Atum joined with the light of his creation, and Ra came into being. The light of Ra dispelled the darkness of the moon.
So it's hysterical and ironic that the Hebrew, Christian, Judaic religion has the divine name of God, the secret, hidden name of God. So the mouth is used to profess words, thus the prophecy of the future. And since ancient times, the kings, the priests, they were the ones that were looked upon to guide the people and lead them into the future. Therefore, they had to know the prophecy of the future, which meant knowing where the sun, the moon, and the stars are. So in the next video, the last video in this series of 12, I'm going to explain how the biblical prophecies have plagiarized from the ancient prophecy of the sun, God, Apollo, and the oracles of prophecy.